Hey y'all, welcome back to the 12 Days of Christmas mini tutorials. Some of them not so mini. I hope that you've been following along. Today is our big one, day 12. It's a little more detailed, but I think you'll enjoy it, and it is in acrylics. Well, Merry Christmas, and thank you for joining me for this last day of the 12 Days of Christmas mini tutorials, some of which weren't mini. I think I did a couple of them 9x13s. This particular one is actually a 9x12, but I did it on this paper, and believe it or not, I got this from the Five Below store. I just happened on it, and I thought, oh, that's good paper for practicing on. I wouldn't use it for watercolors, not enough sizing, but for acrylics, it's awesome. For drawing, awesome. This paper says it's 140, but it feels a whole lot thicker. It's just nice, really nice paper. If I do canvas, it's got a lot of texture, unless I feel like putting several coats of gesso on it, which I don't. So, the colors I've got here, white, coral, which is kind of a peachy color, true red, yellow. Don't know if I'll use teal, but I've got a little peacock teal here. Payne's gray, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, a dark green, it's just forest green, and then a light green, which is apple green is what it's called. And I'm just using cheap brushes. I do have a really good set that I use for pet portraits, but in general, acrylics tend to tear up brushes really fast, and so I use the cheap ones whenever I can get away with it. I do have a bristle brush just in case I feel like giving a little texture. Bristle brushes are great for that. So here I've got a 1/2 inch flat. I've got a fine, this would be a number 2. This would be a 1/4 inch filbert, which just means it's got a rounded tip. And this is a 3/8 inch angled, or 1/4 inch angled's fine. Angled is just nice for getting into the corners when you're working at painting. I'm thinking I want to start with the background. That way, if I have to go over anything, it's not going to be very visible. So I'm just going to start with putting some white down. I did outline. Yeah, good. It's going to be seen through. I wasn't sure I would be able to see it through, see my outline through the white, but thankfully I can. A little bit of ultramarine blue here, just in case there was some sky back there. If you want if you want to be able to work your painting more, in other words, have the paint open longer, you're going to want to go with a canvas, because when you're doing it on paper, the thing that I love about that is it dries like really, really fast, almost immediately. Well, not quite immediately, as you can tell, but it dries really fast. And so sometimes if you prefer to have a lot more work time, you're going to want to go with a canvas. And if you want it smoother, you can always put some smooth gesso on it, a couple layers to smooth it out. And you can even, once you put some gesso on it, you can even sand that. You can also work on a board. They have a lot of acrylic paint boards, at really even a piece of MDF. As long as you seal it first with some sealer, you can paint on that all day long. I have a friend, that's the only way he does his acrylics, is on MDF boards. He puts them in the shows and everything. They're real nice and firm for framing, and he really likes working on MDF. Now I think we need to throw maybe a little Payne's gray into our sky, just to give it a little shadow. Maybe not that much. Thin it out with a little white. Clean my brush a little. I'm going to sprinkle snow over this, which is why I didn't want it to be too terribly light, because I do want to be able to sprinkle snow over the top of this with splattering. So that lends itself better to a nice little bit of color on your surface. I decorated my pinky for you. I thought if y'all have to look at that blessed thing on my finger, at least let's make it interesting. So I painted it today. Okay, a little more blue in here. so that his face stands out. There we go. My brush strokes are almost like X's, so if you're new to acrylic and you haven't found a technique, the reason I like to do that is it fills in the areas and it doesn't leave, you know, brush strokes that are all in the same direction or anything. So I just, that's the reason I do that when I'm trying to fill something in, or if I want it to have sort of a loose texture, I just do this sort of, it's almost like an X, but sort of a laying over X, I guess you would say. Let's add a little bit of brown down in here. And then pick up our white. You do your white first, doesn't matter. A little more panes. It doesn't matter if my snowman melts into the background just a little bit, but I just don't want him to melt in there too much. How about we assume that there's some greenery down here and just add a little hint of green. I actually tore my paper down here, but since I'm painting with acrylics, I just glued it back together, and I know the acrylic texture will cover that anyway, so not worried about it. See how you can dry brush over it and just give it really cool textures. I'm not doing too much of that because I am going to have snow, and I want I don't want the dry brush texture to hide the snow in the sky. I am going to use some dry brush texture on the rest of it, but I don't want it to hide the snow in the sky. Notice I'm just putting very little color into the sky, just enough that when I do put some snow on there, it's going to stand out. And in order to give it more of that shabby chic look, I'm not going all the way to the edges. If you notice that, you can if you want to. Just trying to keep it kind of relaxed and not too super detailed. I think I'm going to need more white. This paper does absorb it pretty well. The canvas doesn't because it comes pre-primed. Even if you don't put any gesso on it, it comes with gesso. So, but the paper does absorb pretty well. I'll make sure that this little area has color where it's behind there. Okay. I think we gave a hint of green on the other side. We can do that again. Burnt sienna. Actually, this seems a little light for burnt sienna. I guess it just depends on the brand. This brand is actually, this burnt sienna is from my art kits. And so the brand is actually Deco Art Americana. Which is a really long name, but they're pretty decent for my art kits because they have good pigment. But their colors may not necessarily match everybody else's version of that color, which is not unusual between brands. Even with watercolors, it can be very different from one brand to the next. Do you see how quick that dried? That I was having to really work it and put some more layers on there just to get to work it. So it does dry quickly, which I like. Like I said, if you don't like that, If you need a little more work time, just use canvas instead. You'll be all right. You could also pre-prime your paper. If you wanted to use the smoothness of the paper, you could just pre-prime it. Even just like a Kills spray primer, anything, you can paint on that with acrylics all day long. But that would certainly give it a little more open time when you're working with it. Open time simply means that you can work it longer. Let's just start with the face so we can have some fun. I did outline the eyes and the mouth. I was afraid I was going to lose them, which actually the pencil is showing all right, but I was afraid I was going to lose them, and so I outlined them with my little marker that we used in our watercolor the other day, which is just a permanent marker, a Sharpie. However, be aware, your acrylics will show through that Sharpie like for all eternity, no matter how many layers you put on. So I only did the eyes and the mouth because I knew those were going to be black. But I knew that those outlines were going to stay with me no matter how many layers I put on. So I just decided to go ahead and do that just to be on the safe side that I wouldn't lose the eyes and the mouth. But look, see, I can even see the nose pretty well, and that was just pencil. So, okay, a little ultramarine and Payne's gray for some shadow on the face. It's a little happy on the ultramarine, but we can always lighten it up with some more white. I do want a little bit of texture with this. I'm not trying to make it super smooth. Some nice shadow under the hat. Little shadow under the chin where his coat is, or his scarf. And let's put some reflections of other colors in here a little bit every now and then too. It's just nice to have different colors. I don't like everything to be the same color all the time. I like to give it a little variety in the, especially in the shadow area where you can sometimes get reflections and whatnot. Go into a little of this pink that's going to be on his scarf and let that reflect onto his face. And then we're going to put a little bit of this nice coral pink color right at the top of his mouth. I'm almost dry brushing right here, which is okay. You can smooth it if you want to. I'll demonstrate smoothing it if you want. You just add a little white. I think I still have little pains on my brush. I'm going to rinse that off. If you add a little white, if you want it to look real smooth, just work your blush color into your white and it will be smoother edged. But sometimes I like the dry brush look a little better, but especially with acrylics, it's just a nice look. See how smooth you can make it if you want, right? A little bit of pink reflection, maybe down in the shadow here too. It's not a lot, just a tiny bit. I think his pink cheeks are a little too big, so I'm going to make that smaller. I was trying to demonstrate how to make it smooth, and I wound up making them too big, so we'll go over that in a minute and make it darker, but I just wanted to reduce the size. You can leave them big if you like them. Okay. I think the hat probably next. The hat is sort of a, I mean, you could make it black, but I really am not going for black on that. I would rather it was kind of a grayish. We'll add some browns in it too. bit of our burnt sienna. This would lend itself nicely to watercolor, by the way, with the flowing colors, especially in the hat and whatnot. I think it would be really nice watercolor. Now remember, acrylics do dry darker, watercolors dry lighter, acrylics dry darker. So this is going to be darker before it's all over with. A little darkness right there. I love that dry brush that you can do with acrylics, especially on this paper, because it soaks it in pretty quickly, and so you're able to dry brush almost right away on top of another layer instead of having to wait for it to dry. It's pretty cool. Okie dokie, let's do the rest of the hat. That's going to be that little is going to be like a ribbon on the hat. Okay, same colors, a little of the burnt sienna, a little Payne's gray, a little blue. You don't have to mix it on your brush. Sometimes it's helpful if you don't. I'm going to start, well, I've got a lot of color on my brush to do the shadow. And then as the color wears off my brush, I can move into the rest of the hat. This is kind of an overlap on the hat, so that's why it's a little darker. It's meant to look like a bit of an overlap there. I'm going to go ahead and put some shadows under our leaves here and under the roses so that it looks appropriately shaded. I never did see any of that brown, so we're going to add some of that brown in here. Payne's gray is fairly powerful, which I love it. I use it as black. I don't like black. So Payne's gray works quite nicely as a black for me. And if you really need it to be, it has a bit of a bluish tint, so if you want to get rid of that, you can mix a little bit of burnt sienna with it. It makes a very nice jet black without the flatness that comes with black. Okay, I'm grabbing a little bit of the blue and Payne's gray just to put some distinct shadows under our little roses and leaves here. Use my fine brush just so I could get to that a little better. And while I'm at it, I can outline this hat a little better. Well, I've got that in my hand, I may as well do the eyes. They can be round or they can be rough like little coals, pieces of coal if you want. I'm doing them solid because I am going to put a little highlight on them with my white. So right now I'm just more concerned with getting them painted in. And go ahead and put his little rocky smile on his face made out of little pebbles. A little bigger if you left marks with your pen. They don't have to be perfect. Remember, they're little pebbles. So, okay, I think that's good for his face and eyes. A little shadow under our ribbon. And there's some flowers over here that probably need a little bit of shadow under them, so I'm just going to put that there right now. Going back to this little liner brush, with a little of this color, I'm just going to darken this side under the hat a little bit. There, that looks better, like he's ties into the hat a little better. There we go. Again, a little splash of other colors in there from time to time. Really helps with the interest. Keep that eyes interested, especially with your acrylics. I mean, if you wanted it to look like a photo, just go take a photo, right? Nothing wrong with photo art, but it is definitely different, and it's meant to look kind of perfect unless it's one of those people that edit their art. I have a friend that is wonderful at doing that, and he edits photos and turns them into art. It's really quite amazing. Slipped into my background a little too much there, which happens. So I'm going to come into my blue and gray. Just patch that. Look how easy that blends out. You never know, that wasn't on purpose, right? Okay, I can't stand his dark eyes. I gotta put some highlight on there. A big highlight and a little highlight. That's better. May as well do his nose. A little red and a little yellow makes a carrot color. And then you come along the bottom with a little bit of burnt sienna for shadow. Make your lines with your burnt sienna. And you can use a little bit of your that orangey color that we made with a little white on it, and put a little highlights on the top. Move your lines with the shape of the carrot, and it will help that look curved. You can always add a little splash of a little more yellow on there if you want. I think I can fix his cheeks now. Probably if I use this, well, no, that brush is too small. I'm going to use the filbert. Sometimes you can get nicer round edges with a filbert. And I am going to dry brush it because I prefer that look. There we go. The cute little guy. Girl. Okay. Let's see here. I think I'm going to do the roses last. So let's go for the scarf. How about some white? We'll shadow it, and then we'll put our little, maybe some little dots on it. can do stripes too, obviously, but I think dots are just a lot easier to work with. There's not as much detail required with dots. This all has to be white anyway, so just filling it in now. Okay, a little shadow. If you spritz your plate every now and then, by the way, it will help keep your paints wet. Just a little bit of a spritz is all. It doesn't take a lot. Adding a little bit of that peach into here. It's almost like he's a warm, frosty snowman. A little bit of shadow back there, not a lot. I do need some shadow under our scarf, which is blowing in the wind. A little bit, not too much wind here, obviously, because there's not much movement there, but we need a little bit of shadow under the scarf. Add a little white to smooth that if you want a smoother line. Put a little color throughout here every now and then. Maybe a little more blue. There's not much blue in this. Not done with that hat, but at some point you've got to move on to something else, right? Okay, we're going to go ahead and put some shadows. I think the shadows for this teal or coral, I think the shadows for this coral color would work nicely with a little burnt sienna and Payne's gray. I think that it would make more sense. The tones, I think, would make more sense for shadows of that particular color. I'm putting them under. You could put them on top, but I'm putting them under. And then I'm going to color on top, paint on top of it. Okay. Now I'm going to grab some white and some of this little coral color. And we're going to do this scarf. You can put more shadows on top, but I wanted some shadows under too. And sometimes in acrylics, just like in watercolors, you can tell what's on top. And so sometimes it's just nice to put a little shade down below. I do that with children's portraits. I like to put the shading, well, in people portraits too, adult portraits. People. Children are people too. Um, I do that with portraits because I like to have that soft shade under the skin as opposed to trying to put shade on top of it. You can always add some shade on top, but it just seems to look a little more natural when the shade is underneath. Okay, see how you can see the little bit of those shadows? Now, what I want to do, and I want to do it before I apply the top shadows for a reason. I'm going to put some, actually, hang on a minute. Let me put a little more color on here first. A little bit of this red mixed with the coral for darker areas. Now you'll be able to see what I do next a little better. Okay, I'm going to grab my little brush, my number 2 round. And we're going to put some little polka dots on this scarf. I'm doing it while the bottom color is still a little bit dry for a reason. Don't forget to do some halfsies over to the side, okay? I'm doing that for a reason because I want it to bleed through, mix in and bleed through just a little bit so that they look shadowed and they look like they're part of it and not just bright, crazy dots, because that shabby chic look is always a little more mellow. Which is why I don't have a super bright scarf on him. Which is typically what I do. I always do those bright red scarves. I like red scarves. Not only for wearing. I have this really cool bright red, black, and gray scarf that I like to wear in the winter. They don't have to be placed exactly in any particular way. It's just, we're just giving it some interest, right? Okay, that's enough dots. Now I'm going to wait for that to dry. And while it dries, I can soften up this belly look a little bit. Put some white over it. There, look at that. I just sent that right, sent those little shadows right back. Calmed them down a little bit. They do need to come around the edge here where we've got a white highlight though. I don't mind him fading into the background a little bit, but I don't want him to fade down quite that much. So I'm giving him a little bit of an outline here. I could actually pick up some paint. There we go. Okay. Okay, that white's still drying. Let's put the little ribbon on his hat. A little white mixed in. A little bit of our Payne's Gray and Burnt Sienna. clean my brush and blend that just a little bit more. There we go. And while I've got this little brush out, I'm going to lighten up some of these areas on his hat. There we go. This is the rim. It's getting a little more light right there. Kind of lost my shadow there, so I'm going to put that back. Okay. Is that dry yet? Nope, not yet. Getting a lot of paint on my finger. I could do a few of the shadows though. Little Payne's gray with a little bit of burnt sienna, and we're just gonna the little spots that are really dark. I'm sort of dry brushing, but if you wet your brush, it wouldn't be dry brushed. But I do like the, as you know, the dry brush look. Needs a little more shadow under there. You can do that, by the way, with your finger. It's wonderful for evening out a little bit of shadow. Smoothing the edges on it. I think I'd rather dry brush this after it dries a little bit more, but I can do the really dark shadows, I guess. The reason that we take the time to do these shadows around the edges is otherwise it looks kind of cartoony, which is okay if that's the style you're for, but if you want it to look a little more on the playful, realistic side, then you can put some shadows. That just makes a huge difference. Little bends of the scarf, bends in the fabric. Reflection of that color down. And we could go ahead and do his little strings, whatever they're called at the end of the scarf. I used to know the word for that. I haven't used it in so long. It is left. I'm sure you're all saying it right now. Fringe, that's it, fringe. I must have heard you. A little bit of dark into the fringe as if it was shadowed or something. I'll have to do a lot of it. Okay, now these little flowers. May seem a little daunting, but they're not so bad. And I probably should do some of the leaves first. They need to be behind, not in front. The leaves need to be behind, not in front. So now I lost some of this, so I'm going ahead and just adding it in because I know what that's supposed to look like. It's supposed to look like a bunch of greenery. I'm going around my petals with my green. There's my lines. I'm not doing it super thick because I want this background to show through a little bit. I just don't want it to be super, I want it to look, that shabby chic look that we're going for, which is never super detailed. Or that shabby chic look is never super bright. It's just a little toned down in the colors. Now, I didn't do a lot of work on that, as you plainly saw, but it looks like greenery, and that's all it has to do. It just needs to look like some leaves coming out of this little hat. A little bit of the darker color here and there. This needs to have a little something there. It just doesn't look right, so we'll add another little branch right here. My hand's stuck on polka dot. Okay. It looks a little bit fuller, maybe a little more down here. I think probably should have a little bit coming down here too. This I think was in the drawing. Okay, there's a little greenery over here. There's a little more water on my brush this time. When you're painting on canvas, you don't want to water it down too much because acrylics are essentially plastic. They have binders in them that need time to cure, and as they cure, they stick to whatever they're attached to. However, with paper, it's being absorbed. It's a little different. It's a different process, and so you can water it down when you're working on paper because of the absorption will offset that and will allow it to it's already attached because it started to absorb into the paper, so you don't have to worry about it attaching as it cures because it is well into the fibers of the paper when you're using paper. There's a little flower right there that I kind of lost, but I know he's there somewhere. So we're just going to go ahead and do his little leaves around him, and we'll paint the flower over it. Okay, there's some greenery around this little flower down here. Again, I've got this paint just a little watered down so that I'm getting some of this background color in it. Some of it I'm letting it get real light as it comes off my brush. I think that works. Okay. A little bit of our lighter green just tossed in there every now and then. Now, let's add a third color in here. I like to have 3 colors in things just to make them more interesting. Some of the leaves are a little darker, so by adding a little of this ultramarine blue, adds a little more shadow, a little more interest. Makes some of the leaves just a little bit darker. Probably be better if it was of a dry brushing with that technique, but my brush was a little too wet. Okay, let's see if we can't get some roses done. I'm going to start with the darker color. I say darker. Essentially, I'm just starting with the pure color. And then I can mix a little white in with it. And I can add a little red where I want the shadow. I really think I might want to mix a little of that red with some burnt sienna to make our shadow color. I think that's going to look better. A little more along the lines of our shabby chic look. Somebody might say, shabby chic is out. What are you doing? I like shabby chic. I'm sorry. Maybe it's just the good memories of when my kids were little and running around, and it was the 90s, and I don't know, but I do like it. Okay, well, I had that. I just went ahead and put some shadows in, and I'm going to come back to my peachy color, coral, little white. You can tell I'm not being super detailed here, right? I mean, I'm not trying to make a perfect little rose. I'm just trying to hint at the rose structure, which is petals and shadows. White. Let's see here. I think I need to bring this up a bit right there. That looks a little more rosy shaped. Little shadow. We made that shadow with some burnt sienna and a little red. Put that at the base here to make it look like this petal is going down. There we go. Okay. I want it to stand out against this hat, so I'm adding a little extra white. I totally lost this one. So let's do a leaf under here. And then a leaf under here. And a little shadows right in the middle. Okay. Now I'm going to take a little water with ever the tiniest bit of this shadow color, and I'm going to add some shadow. Whoa. I'm going to add some shadows. You can pick up whatever you feel is too much. I'm going over my polka dots so that it appears. That's the reason I saved this for now, because I want the polka dots to appear like they're also shadowed along with the rest of it. Not everything is shadowed except the polka dots. They stand out. Hear that wind whipping around? I don't know if you can hear that. We got some serious wind going on in Tennessee today. Okay, how about a little bit of highlights on our scarf? Maybe along the edge. Put my shadow back that I lost right there. Right under his hat, that should be a little bit more shadowed because of the shadow from the hat. So we're just going to add that. That was too much water. A brush there. It's a little too orangey down here, so I'm just toning down that orange. Okie dokie. Adding a little bit of a white highlight to tone down these greens just a bit. The snowflakes will do that a little bit as well, but I just want to make them blend into the background just a hair, and a little bit of a dry brush with some of this white and peach tone does that nicely. Okay, let's get our last little flower made down here. I might be able to see through it if I just color it in. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I can kind of see those lines. Probably should have outlined the others a little bit darker too. You can do that when you paint yours. I always tell people when I have a lot of tutorials at paintingtogether.com. And what I recommend is watch through it once. Don't try to paint along with me the very first time without watching through it first. It's sometimes you get tips along the way that you're like, oh, I should have known that before I did it. Because I'm an artist. I am not a professional videographer. I paint, and it was all I could do to teach myself to even talk while I did it. Because when I start painting, I'm in another world. I'm on another planet. Okay, so it I'm painting along, and I'm figuring it out as I go. And in order to share with you, I'm just sharing my painting process. But sometimes I discover things along the way. So that's why it's a lot easier sometimes to watch it first and then get out your paper and watch it a second time while you paint it. We should do the shadows first. So we're going to grab a little more of this burnt sienna with some red. This makes that nice little shadow. Under the leaves, we add a little shadow. Under where the next one comes up. And in the middle. If you can just imagine in your mind, where the next petal is going over, there's going to be a little shadow under it. And the one that's tucked down, there's going to be a little shadow down towards where it gets tucked into the rose. And then the rest of it you can highlight, and there you go. You got 3 tones. I do like to put a little panes in some of the deeper spots so that we have that third color. That works. I don't know if I have enough white actually, but I might. I'm not going for the perfection of a rose here. I'm just hinting at the petals. And just a small amount of effort will actually do that for you without having to make your roses perfectly, completely detailed out, drawn out. Okay. Dude needs some little buttons down here, doesn't he? I lost where they were, but I think they were right around there. Needs his little buttons. I'm going to go into that with a little bit of gray. Which actually works nicely. It creates some of your shadows for you when that happens, you know? Just the last minute details here. And I'm going to post this for you so you can enjoy it. Maybe you can paint before Christmas is out. Don't forget those 12 days of Christmas. There's 12 different paintings for you. Have fun with it. Don't worry about being too perfect. Remember, it's all a learning process. I've been painting for over 50 years. We're not going to talk about how many years, okay? But it's been a long time. If it helps me feel better when I say that my mom says I started when I was 3 because I would sit still. This whole thing made me sit still. A little ADHD going on there, although they didn't diagnose it as that back then. My mama sure knew what it was. She just didn't know what to call it. She called it ants in your pants. She said, you got ants in your pants. Can't you sit still? Just intensifying a few of those little shadows before I go back and put a little bit of dry brush white on top. I think he needs a little more shadow right by his cheek where the scarf is. I'm going to soften that with my fingers. That's better. And a little bit right here where the scarf touches. If you don't like the way it looks, just wet your brush and go over it a little more. See how that smoothed it out? There we go. Now that this soaked in, it doesn't look very white, so I am highlighting my highlights again, just to make sure that this is showing up a little bit better. We can do the same up here where it kind of soaked in a little bit. Make sure our highlights are where we want them. You can change the colors on this. You can make it yellow roses. You can do anything you want. Okay, you can make it pinker roses. This could all be just pink. It doesn't have to be, the colors that I did. It could be pink and white. It could be anything. I wonder if I should put eyebrows on this little dude. No, I don't think I want eyebrows on him. Okay. I'm going to do a few highlights with white. I'm going to dip it in the white. I'm going to tap it on here so it's not very wet. And we're going to dry brush a few highlights on here. Not a lot because I do want my snowflakes to stand out. But I really do love dry brushing. Okay, a little bit on this ribbon up here. Oh yeah, that looks good. And I think you could leave it right here. You totally could. But I gotta have some snowflakes. If it's wet enough, you should get droplets. If it's not wet enough, you sometimes can get some streaks because you wind up hitting it too hard. We don't want to hit it too hard. Now, in order for this to look more, well, I'm getting this everywhere. In order for this to look a little more shabby chic and relaxed, oops, I just saw some petals I missed. Probably should put those before I finish these droplets. Okay. I'm actually going to come into my greens. Do these little flowers that I forgot. He's got his arms tucked in. I know you can't see his arms. You can put arms on him if you want, but I didn't want to distract from the rest of this, so he doesn't have little arms, but that's okay. He's just all cuddled up and got his arms tucked in so that he'll stay warm. Okay, now back into our white. Make sure we're sprinkling over those leaves a little bit too. Wetter makes bigger drops, by the way. If you want bigger drops, you got to make it wetter. And you can come in and smooth some of these and make them not so perfect. And that also lends itself to this look. Maybe some of them are a little bit bigger. Well, all of them, but just every now and then. You could just sort of loosen up the shape on a few of them, and it gives you even more of that little shabby chic look. And none on these leaves, so I'm just going to add some because somehow the leaves just didn't get very many. Don't know how that happened. Hopefully this wasn't as long as it feels, because it feels like it was long. But I do hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed following along. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're not, then I hope to see you on my website. I hope to see all of you on the website, paintingtogether.com for tutorials, carolrobinking.com for my artwork, as well as the art kits, acrylic paint-along art kits, everything included, even the canvas. And I hope that you will enjoy one of those. It makes a great gift. I'll be coming up with some children's ones too that I haven't gotten to yet. I'm adding a few little highlights at the top of the hat. A little crease there maybe. There we go. Whoa. Clean the brush. Smooth that out. Put a little snow down here. He's in the snow. There we go. Just occurred to me how I could make his eyes look like they're smiling a little bit. And I think it's by putting a little bit of white under his eyes. Kind of like Santa's eyes smile, you know. I'm also going to put a little shadowing around his eyes so that they don't look quite so stark. I think that makes him look like he's smiling a little more. I do want to add some blues in here. You could add some, oh, teal. I forgot I had the teal. Throw a little teal in that hat just for kicks and see what happens. Teal and rose go together really. Body. Smooth it in a little bit. I think that added a little something to it. Doesn't take a lot, just ever the slightest touch. Blend it in a little with your brush. Wipe it off if you don't like it or if it's too much. I decided I needed some more green under here, as if there was a lot more leaves. I think it just makes it look better. More like his hands are holding it that way, you know? Same here, only it's going to be almost background dry brushed on. Like it's almost fading into the background a little bit. It just makes it look a little bit looser. It's almost like they're in the distance, you know? I think that was that final little touch that it needed. Thank you so much for following along with my tutorial. Don't forget, I have art kits available at carolrobinking.com in the store, and I have a lot of tutorials available at paintingtogether.com. I hope to see you there. Merry Christmas!